Hey guys, this is Adam Carswell, and today I'm joined by Ryan Smith. Ryan is the principal of Elevation Capital. He was born and raised in Orlando, Florida, went to the University of Tampa and Oregon State, where he played baseball, which is a cool story within itself. Might get to hear a little bit about that today. And Ryan now lives in Orlando, Florida, where he runs his company as well, which is another big focus of today's interview. Really excited to have him here, guys. This has been one in the making for sure. Ryan, thank you for coming on the show. And do you have any opening remarks for my listeners?
I appreciate being here. It's good to see you again in this time. And no, I'm excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. And as he mentioned, good to see me here in this time. We've got a cool topic tied to closing deals during COVID. We're going to get into that in a little bit here, guys. But a little more context, I look back at my journey as a commercial real estate professional. And it's funny, I look back, definitely one of the defining moments was actually a day where I met Ryan for the first time. It was May 2017? It was May 2018. And I had just finished going through the Cash Flow Connections mentorship program. I think I had maybe done a little bit of work with Hunter at this time, which Hunter Thompson is the connector between Ryan and I. And I went to this dinner, an investors dinner, where Ryan and Hunter were talking about a fund that they were putting together. And to be honest, it was like I might as well have just gone to China and listened to an entire presentation in Chinese, because I didn't know really what these guys were talking about. But I'll never forget one of my biggest takeaways from that first time being in this space, being surrounded by investors, was I was blown away about how down to earth so many people in this industry are. I think before getting into commercial real estate, I was like, it's going to be everyone in suits, and it's, sharks and just intimidating, mean people. It just could be further from the truth. If anything, I was like, wow, everyone here is like focused on giving and sharing. And one great thing about Ryan that I'll never forget him saying to me one time, this was actually at Hunter's wedding, was he'd much rather, in fact, he tries to stay away from speaking gigs. He'd rather teach. And teaching is so powerful. When you can wake up every day with a mindset where you want to teach and educate, life just gets better and better. So that's a little bit of our history and how we first got to know each other. I do want to flip it over to you here, Ryan, to maybe follow up on anything that I just shared.
No, I agree. I agree. I mean, it's been good getting to know you. It's been fun watching kind of you grow and mature and evolve and kind of your understanding and how you're executing on, so many different things, including podcasts like this. And I think you do a great job. So I'm proud of all that, all that you're doing.
Thank you. And as I mentioned, guys, Ryan's also got an athletic background like myself. You might not be able to tell from the video, but I think you're probably taller than me too. I'm 6'5". You're probably about 6'8".
Yep, 6'8".
Yep. And played. This is the crazy thing about Ryan, and this was what kind of reminds me of guys like Russell Brunson, for example. I think at age like 13 or 14, he was one of those people who like created a piece of software, like sold it to his dad, and like people started using it. And then meanwhile, he was busy like, getting straight A's and ready to go to the major leagues in baseball, but decided to focus in real estate, which is, again, another story within itself. But could you elaborate on maybe that 14-year-old story I just referenced, and then your baseball journey too?
Sure. So I guess I'm a pretty curious person, and I like to tinker and I like to fix problems and and make things better. So as a young person, I taught myself to code. Ended up learning 13 languages. I started getting curious about it around 8 years old, and so I'd go to different businesses, and they'd have issues. And this was by way of context. This would have been in the 90s, late 90s, or I'm sorry, late 80s, early 90s. And so, I'd go to a business and they'd have some kind of issue that I thought technology could solve. So I'd go home and write a software program at the time, put it on a disk, and then, take it to the business owner and say, here, this should solve your problems. Or I wrote software for my teachers, and, I wrote software for everybody. So anyway, short story, my dad had a real estate business. I grew up in the real estate business, and everything from digging trenches to scraping walls to replacing wax rings on toilets. And, it evolved into more financial modeling and forecasting and evaluation. So I thought, my dad's ADDs, ADHDs, brilliant. but financial forecasting and modeling isn't his strength. So I thought it would be cool if I could challenge myself to create a software application to make the complex simple. And that's probably the theme of everything I've done. I really enjoy solving problems, but I really enjoy making things simple and trying to find the simplicity in things. So I was able to I spent a whole summer, took 3 months. It was kind of a strange thing for a kid to do in the summer months, to spend the whole time in front of the old CRT monitor. I would code until anywhere between 2 and 4 in the morning every night. Just couldn't type fast enough. I'd wake up with code in my head and had to, type it out, and my eyes hurt because of the screen. But anyway, built the application. It worked. My dad loved it. He told a friend, ended up building an install base of about 140,000 customers globally. That is mom and pop investors using my software to model their investments. So it was cool. It was really rewarding.
Yeah, and guys, that just goes to show a lot about Ryan's character there too. It's a story that is very powerful, but I don't think he would ever publicly share it unless someone is like, "Hey, can you tell that story?" So, it's quite an accomplishment to have at a young age, and it shows, that type of energy carries on as you get older. And then also with baseball, I know you had an offer, or you were about to get drafted, and you kind of decided to go the real estate direction.
Yeah. I got drafted out of high school by the Baltimore Orioles. I was a pitcher through mid '90s, and was 6'8", threw hard. And I have my uncle pitched in the major leagues. I have another relative who was up for induction into the Hall of Fame. So I've got baseball in my blood. So got drafted professionally out of high school. At that point, I had a software company I was building, and I was making some pretty decent income. So I really, I saw value in my education, and I wanted to continue to build my business. So I played baseball all the way through college. Got drafted again by the Anaheim Angels, and then out of college, my last year, the Braves, reached out and said, "Hey, I'd been drafted 2 times previously, and I had not signed." And so they said, "Yeah, if we draft you this time, will you sign?" And I said, "No." So, and interestingly enough, this wasn't the question, but a couple of months later, I met my wife, Jamie, who I would not have likely met had I signed with the Braves. So I to this day consider her my non-signing bonus.
Nice.
So, yeah.
And that's another shout out we got to give here too, guys. I've had the privilege of meeting Ryan's wife, Jamie, at least 2, maybe 3 times. She wrote a really powerful book a few years back called Trailer Cash, which is tied to their business. And I think she said she's working on like a revised version or a new version. Is that right?
Yeah. Yep.
Right.
Yep. It's woefully, it's so out of date. It's embarrassing, but it's a good book. It just, it's probably 11 years old now.
So anyways, that's the background. That's the story, guys. Now I want to talk to you about we're going to step into the next level chamber. Here we go. The focus of today's conversation, which is closing deals during COVID. This is really what kind of gave me the idea to bring Ryan on the show. And I'm happy that, over the years of getting to know each other, we waited till now to do it. One of the first things I remember seeing when the COVID chaos was taking place is Ryan's posting pictures and videos on Facebook. Like, I'm on my way to Oregon. I'm on my way here. Like, he's flying all over the country when everyone's panicked and freaking out. This guy's just like, I don't care. I'm going to continue my business. And then on top of that, it seems like you've closed like 20 deals over the past 6 months. I'm sure it's probably like 2 or 3, but they've been very profound. By the way, you guys, they're focused in self-storage and mobile home parks. They've done a phenomenal job. We've gotten to work with them over the years at ASIM Capital. Just a tremendous track record. If you're not already convinced that Ryan knows what he's doing based on his younger days. So again, I know I just threw a lot out there, but what I'm most intrigued by, Ryan, is probably the psychology behind closing these deals and looking for opportunity and proceeding with business as if it's normal right now, when most people are afraid to do that. What do you think are like some of the foundational pieces of what you've been doing that people listening today can take and go out there and replicate your success?
Yeah, I know it's a good question. I guess for us, for me, I think we all, from a psychological standpoint, I think we tend to look at disequilibrium as the outlier. And and constancy as normal. So it's like all waters are smooth and choppy water is really strange, when in fact I think the water is far more, choppy is far more normal than glass-like or smooth. So to me, yes, COVID was was a curveball, came out of the blue. I didn't foresee it. Most people did not. And there will be probably 50 other COVID-like events in my career. So, at the end of the day, you got to play the game, and you've got to, and by that, I don't mean throw caution to the wind and be foolish. It's, everything's about managing risk. And so, you play the game and you manage your risks. And that's, whether it's COVID or, election or depression or a war or, and I do think the next 10 years will be a choppy decade. So I think, I do not think things will go back to being smooth and tranquil anytime soon. So, that's neither here nor there. I might be wrong. I hope I am, but I'll say in short, you got to play the game.
Absolutely. And you know what, I want to take a step back here too. We didn't really get into it much, but Elevation Capital Group, as I mentioned, you guys are focused on self-storage, mobile home parks, your operators. For our listeners that are more in tune with the commercial real estate industry, could you share with them a little bit more about what you guys do? And, before we get to the end of the interview, we might as well do it now. How can they look into working with or investing with you guys too?
Yeah. So any our information's, our website's elevationcapitalgroup.com. Information on our fund that we have open is elevationfund.com. And then, my information's there, and, feel free to reach out anytime if I could be helpful. But as to what we do, we're in the mobile home park and self-storage space, and, we can talk about mobile homes and, storage lockers and all of these things. But, basically what we do for a living is we find dollars. We manage dollars, and then, we try to find more, knowing the value of each dollar. So that's simply put what we do.
Another takeaway, I remember hearing you talk about this before, is I think you've used the phrase Disney World clean or something like that. And this is one thing I really enjoy working with Hunter on, and I can tell that there's no disconnect here between Elevation and ASIM, where just like things sharp, tight, clean, like taken care of, zipped up. You guys, like, you're not going to touch anything if it's not Disney World clean, basically, is what I'm getting at. Where does, that's such a foundational part in a successful business. I guess, could you just talk about that concept and how it's been important to you over the years?
Yeah. So, part of our, I guess it fundamentally, I'll start this way. I have a dear friend of mine who I've learned a ton from. His name's Tim Keller. And Tim Keller's exceptional. He's the C.S. Lewis of our time, if you're familiar with C.S. Lewis. But his wife, Kathy, is arguably even more brilliant, which is, hard to say with a straight face. But Kathy said years ago, and I agree with her statement, she said that excellence is the ultimate form of inclusion. Okay. And she said this years before, inclusion was any of this was kind of the topic of the day. But I tend to agree with her that, if anybody of all, all races and creeds and income, we all stop dead in our tracks when we experience excellence. It's inclusive. It doesn't cut across, doesn't segregate, doesn't, create walls. It actually tears them down and brings people together. And, it's ultimately inclusive. And so, to me, we love people. We're in the people business, and that, I can make a bunch of eye-rolling statements, but we truly do like people. We're in the people business. We're in the business of treating our customers well. We're in the business of treating our communities well and our investors well. And so, with the goal of excellence for the purpose of inclusion, that the way then you discharge that is by providing a good product. And so, the Disneyland clean, that's a kind of a brand standard we have. We want our properties to be Disneyland clean, because ultimately we want you, the customer, to feel to enjoy the experience. And we think if you enjoy the experience and you like the facilities, you like the people, that you'll likely come back. And so that'll be income producing, and that ultimately drives a return to the investors and provides it contributes to the local community, and not being, kind of a blight on that society. And so anyway, but I think it emanates all from the point, and I loved her statement because it was so well said, that excellence is the ultimate form of inclusion.
Absolutely. I love that. Going back to the deal that you also kind of referenced there not too long ago. As I mentioned, it seems like going on LinkedIn, I see a new drone video coming out from Elevation Capital and a new acquisition. That's a part of the excellence right there, is those drone videos are very well done. Could you talk about maybe your most recent acquisition, and how you sourced it, just kind of like the step-by-step on how everything took place, again, given the fact that we're in a time where most people aren't acting in the similar manner?
Yeah. So I'm glad you like the drones. I travel with a drone. I do all that. I do all the filming. I edit it in post, in Final Cut Pro, and there's a whole reason why I do all of that myself. But
I mean, that says a lot right there. That you're. I didn't know you were the one editing. That's impressive.
Oh yeah, I film it. I edited. I went through probably 800 sound clips to find the one that I felt was the right tone, and yeah, it's a lot of fun. So I'm glad somebody enjoys them. I enjoy them. But in terms of the last acquisition, so this year we made 4 acquisitions: one in Philadelphia, we had one in Santa Fe, New Mexico, one in Sacramento, California, and then one in Las Vegas, Nevada. The last one was in Las Vegas. It's a storage asset. It's on Tropicana Boulevard near Summerlin, and if you're not familiar with Vegas or Summerlin, Summerlin's a place that much everybody watching this, if we were to move to Vegas, Summerlin would be on the hit list for where you might want to live. Nice place, growing. So the asset itself is dirty. It is not Disneyland clean. It's not well managed. One of the first trips to it, there was a dent, by one of the access doors, there's a big dent, and a huge dent in a panel that somebody had, put in it. And a member of our team asked the manager, this was before we bought it, said, how long's that dent been there? And the guy's like, oh, I don't know, 5 years, 6 years, and we're all just start twitching, so the point is that's just, obviously that didn't matter to them, it matters to us. So we bought the property, and it's hard to describe verbally, but the front on Tropicana Boulevard across the street is a very busy, high traffic In-N-Out Burger. It's a very good location, high visibility, storage facility does. But the challenge is the whole front of the storage facility, it's got a 1970s car wash, where you pull into the bay and you wash your car. It's not automated. It's just kind of so the majority of the frontage, the main road frontage, is all car wash. So the way the office is built, or the office isn't optimal. You don't have a ton of visibility from the road, although it's in a good location. So we're going to go in, tear down the car wash, tear down the office, and build a new 3-story, building, kind of state-of-the-art building with a new office, a proper office, and you'll get good visibility, and it'll provide a lot of opportunity for increased storage, because a lot more space for people to store. So that's, there's other things we're going to do to the property, but we're going to clean it up. We're going to modify it, in terms of its offering. We found that property through a broker. I think in this case, if I recall, I think the seller owned 2 storage facilities in total. He was trying to sell both of them at one time. I think they went out and asked $27 million or so for both. One was existing, the one we bought. It's in an established location that's been around for around 15 years. The other one was newly constructed and leasing up in a newer location. So that one was less desirable for us. So we asked if they would separate them. They said they would. I think he came back and said, I'll sell you the one you want, the good one, so to speak, for, I think it was roughly 13.5 to 14 million. And I think we said no. I think we offered 11 and ultimately settled at just over 11 for the good two. So yeah, so that's kind of how that back and forth went. But we were ultimately able to close on it, and we think it's going to be good over the long run.
Yeah. Sounds like if we had another half hour, we could do another episode on negotiation tactics, but we'll save that one for later. uh, as Ryan mentioned, guys, if you had any questions on anything he said along the way here, it sounds like best way to reach out would be through your website. We'll get that now, contact information.
Sure. So my website's elevationfund.com or elevationcapitalgroup.com. And my email is ryan@elevationcg.com.
There you go. All right. So getting ready to wrap it up here, Ryan, but I got to ask you, could you give a shout out to someone you've never given a shout out to before?
I'll give a shout out to someone I've never given a shout out to. And I question if anybody on the podcast has ever heard of, but I would love for you to know more about him. But a gentleman named G.K. Chesterton. How about that?
Okay. Well, is it what, Chesterton? G.K.?
G.K. Chesterton.
Okay. Yeah. I'll look him up now.
Yeah.
Is that the cliffhanger? We got to go look him up now?
I can tell you a brief thing about him that I love if you would open to it.
Let's do it. Yeah.
So G.K. Chesterton has long since passed, but he's one of my favorite people. There's a story about him. I think it was in the early 1900s. I can't remember which magazine, may have been Time or something, but one of the major magazines published an article inviting readers to respond. And the question posed was, what can we do to make, what must we change to make the world a better place? Right. And send in your feedback. What do we need to do to change the world, basically, or what must change? And so G.K. Chesterton won at the contest with one word. And so he sent his reply and he said, "Me," period. And I love the wisdom of G.K. Chesterton.
Okay.
So
there we go, guys. Go look him up. Well, Ryan, thank you so much for investing your time with us here today. As I mentioned to you before the interview, everyone tuned in here on YouTube. This is only the second time we've done it this way, so it's an honor to have Ryan here in some of our first YouTube versions of the interview. Any closing remarks before we wrap it up?
No, I appreciate the opportunity to be here, and I think there's for those who are listening to this in times of uncertainty and questioning, there's a lot of questioning going on. I would just say there's plenty of opportunity. Play the game, trust yourself. You'll make mistakes, learn, get better over time. But definitely play the game.
Love it. All right, guys. Well, thank you for tuning in to Dream Chasers Interviews with the Future. We will catch you in the next episode. Remember, in all you think, say, and do, take it to the next level.